As we count down these remaining days until election, the Green Bay City Clerk says an emergency plan is in place for any type of scenario.
City staff worked with an agency to make sure they thought of everything when it comes to safety and security. Emily Byer joins us now live in our newsroom with what Election Day will look like in Green Bay. Emily.
Bill and Cammie, Celestine Jeffries has served as Green Bay's city clerk since 2021. She says she focuses on accuracy and completeness on Election Day, but security and safety are also at the top of the list.
My clerk world is a world where security is paramount.
City and county staff have gone through extensive exercises with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
He constructed ever complicating, ever more dangerous scenarios for us to decide, okay, what do we do? How do we communicate? How do we make things safe? How do we keep the election secure?
This training helped the city of Green Bay identify strengths and possible weaknesses.
Were you surprised by any of the vulnerabilities that you guys found?
Yes, there was one thing that surprised us, which I will not share. But yes, it was one. But we, in learning about that vulnerability, we made adjustments.
Plans are now in place to make sure everyone is safe on Election Day. You can see behind me now, this is the east side of the entrance. It is closed to the public. It is for employees only. You'll have to enter on the west side of the building. You're also going to notice parts of Jefferson Street are going to be closed on Election Day. You'll also notice security guards and police inside and outside the building.
We do have private security guards who are now at City Hall. Their role is, again, to be situationally aware and to respond to any person in the building who may need another hand before we call the police. So that is one thing. I will say, though, on Election Day, we do have police officers in the building at Central Count.
Green Bay Police will also be stationed inside the clerk's office and more officers outside by the welcome sign.
I have extreme, deep respect and confidence in our police department and in our Green Bay Metro Fire Department. They have been remarkable, exceptional, wonderful. And, I hope that every clerk in the United States has as great a relationship with their chiefs as I do.
Now, more than 4,200 people have already voted early in person. You can still do that until November 3rd. The city clerk's office will be open only for election-related business on November 4th and 5th. They will be closed on November 6th. Bill and Cammie.